Oh, you can't even see me. That's better. I have something so exciting to share with you today. I decided that it would be important as well to dress up for the occasion so that this lovely lady and I match. She is a 1976 Maycomber floor loom 16 harness 40-inch weaving width. So she is an absolute powerhouse, and I cannot wait to see if I can put her back together. She's currently in 100 different parts. There isn't any official manual. The only thing I have are some hand-drawn vague things that I kind of have maybe an idea about what they are. So this might be a bit of a struggle. The first step to restore this beauty is going to be to clean all of her various parts. She's been stored in a garage for the last like 5 or 6 years from the person I bought it from. So she's got some spider webs, she's got a lot of dust. So she needs to be cleaned from top to bottom. And while I work on cleaning her, I think it'd be fun to talk a little bit about why I might want such a large floor loom. First and foremost, because I love weaving blankets. And while I do have a table loom, that weaving width is around 22 inches, which is just a little bit too small for any sort of even baby blankets, especially because your weaving width is not necessarily your finished fabric or item width. It shrinks 10 to 15% depending on the type of material that you're using to weave. So 40 inches is a really, really great width, where the shrinkage, you might end up with a piece that's around 36 inches wide, which is kind of perfect for a baby blanket, for instance. The other thing is that with such a nice wide weaving width and so many different harnesses, it means I can make a ton of different complicated patterns. Weaving patterns are actually called weaving drafts, and there are some really great drafts from hundreds of years ago that I think would be really fun to explore, and you do need more than 12 harnesses in order to make some of these designs. And then if we go even further back, I think it'd be really fun to make some historical fabrics. That there are some amazingly preserved finds of bog bodies, the oldest tartan. I know that other people have recreated them. I know that there's also the, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, Hjorlfsnes finds and digs with detailed guides on how to remake the gowns, how every individual thread is spun and woven. I want to do that, and this floor loom will allow me to make that dream come true. So this is another huge step in being able to make pieces of clothing from sheep to fabric, and then eventually dress or top or skirt or blanket. So I can't wait until I can start to use this beautiful piece of equipment. She is heavy. She's over 500 pounds, so it was quite an ordeal to get her in here, and I'm surprised that everything and everyone is still in one piece in getting her down here. The loom's gotten its initial clean, and this previously pristine white cloth is the current result of it. I think a few pieces need a little bit more wiping down, but I'm honestly getting a bit of a headache. I think this might have been somewhere where someone smoked. I'm getting a little bit of that smell, which is a little bit of a migraine trigger for me. When I'm just standing next to it, it's not that big of a deal, but the dust and things and like the grease that's coming off is not the most pleasant. So I'm gonna go ahead and scour this cloth so I don't have that near me anymore. I'll probably give everything one more wipe down, and then it's time to do the restoration bit. So there are some bits of this, especially at the top, where there's brass that touches steel. When you have unlike metals touching each other, they tend to corrode, so that needs to be smeared with some Vaseline. So once all of those bits are kind of restored and touched up, it's time to start seeing how I can put things back together. The most complicated bit, I think, is going to be the break. And the break is what keeps the tension on the warp or the piece in progress, because you need a lot of tension on it in order for the weaving to happen. Ooh, sorry. But it is not currently hooked up, and I have this diagram to go off of to see if I can try to put it back together. So let's take a look at that break now. Here is our break system. I have the diagram on my phone right here to reference as best as I can. I have what's called a 2-break system. That second break is down here. Hard to see, but some bits of the chain are broken. And I don't have that second beam installed yet, so I think I'm just going to work with this bit of the braking system. Let me see if I can figure this break out. As a little bit of an aside, as I've been working on this loom, you might have noticed that there's a cable coming out from the back here and a bit of a space in between some of my foot pedals down on the bottom of my loom. And that is because in the 1980s, this loom was retrofitted with a Dobby mechanism. Basically, This loom could be computer controlled by an Atari at the time, which I love so much. And if learning new things, creativity, technology interests you, then I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant. Brilliant is an interactive learning platform where you learn by doing. It's packed with thousands of hands-on lessons in math, data analysis, and programming, perfect for curious minds like ours that love exploring how things work. You know how breaking down complex weaving patterns into smaller bits makes it easier to tackle a difficult challenge? That's exactly how Brilliant works. Their first principles approach starts with the basics and builds your knowledge step by step with interactive problem solving at every turn. It's a method proven to be 6 times more effective than just watching videos. And here's another thing I love. Brilliant makes it easy to build a learning habit. Their lessons take just a few minutes a day, which fits perfectly into those little pockets of time, like maybe when you're waiting for tea to steep or you're giving your hands a break from restoring a loom. Plus, if you're as intrigued by the intersection of creativity and technology as I am, Brilliant's programming courses are a must. They've got everything from learning Python to creative coding, so you can start building your own tools maybe at some point, whether it's designing knitting patterns or automating something cool in your own workshop. I'm a software engineer by background, and Python is my favorite language, so I love keeping my knowledge up to date with their courses. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/engineeringknits or scan the QR code right here. You'll also get 20% off of an annual premium subscription. Thank you again so much to Brilliant for making videos like this possible, and let's head back to the loom. Okay, so I don't know if I can explain this breaking system to you very well, but I'll try to demonstrate. We have the foot pedal for the break right here, so when I'm using the loom and I need to progress the warp, I can press this to release the break, and when that happens, I'll show you in the back, this spring mechanism goes up and it loosens that cord that I just wrapped around the back beam here. So right now the back beam technically shouldn't be able to move, but it will because the brake wire is not tight enough. So when I press the brake, release, it'll release that cord and then I can wind that with this lever. This is not tight enough. I can't change the tightness on this end, that's set. However, when I trace it back to right here, I'm wondering if I can increase the tightness on, what is this, a wing nut? And increase that brake, because this really needs to be able to hold a lot of force in order for the warp to be tensioned properly. I'm guessing on a lot of this, but I'm hoping it's kind of correct. We'll see. I also just noticed on the braking system for the second brake that one of the screw and nuts are bent pretty out of shape, so I'm not sure if the second brake will work quite as well, but we'll see, and that's a problem for later me. I think we're gonna go do the simpler setup first, like I said, and then we'll see if I can at some future point set up that second beam for direct warping. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure if I did this right. If you saw before, I was able to move this beam with the brake activated and this lever, but I adjusted the tension so that I can't do that anymore. And now when I release the brake, it moves. When I put the brake on, it doesn't. So I'm hoping that that's correct. I'm a little worried that I'm not gonna be able to advance the warp like I'm supposed to, but well, we'll see. Okay, so you might have noticed all these pieces laying down here. These are my harnesses. That is my beater. That's my front beam. That's also my front beam. That's like the frame for it. That's the beam itself. I was gonna do the beam next, but the harnesses have to sit in that part of the loom, and I think it's actually going to be easier to hang them without the beams in the front in the way. So I guess the next thing is I'm going to hang all these harnesses. They're quite heavy, so wish me luck. This is going to be a bit of a workout. So I have no guidance on how this is done properly. I couldn't find any diagrams or anything really, or any good close-up pictures, so I'm going to guess that this is the other way around. And the previous owner did have these labeled, but does it matter so much what order they're in? I'm not 100% sure. Well, she said this one is 15, so I guess I'll just put that in place. 15. Ooh. Doing this with one arm. Wow. Okay. Okay, that one's it. Okay, this one. Here, quickly. Oh my gosh. There we go. Okay. Yeah, those are a bit heavy. Hey, but look at that. It lifts and lowers when I move the lamb, so that's good. Let's keep going with all the others. I've got 15 more to go. Some parts of these are rusty too. I honestly probably should have done it this time to clean off all of this rust, but I think that'll be stage 2 of the refurbishing process. Sometimes you have to pace yourself, you know? One solid workout later, and all of the terms escape my head all the time. I'm just calling them frames. I don't think that's the right name for them, but they're all hung. I'm gonna do a really quick tie-up. It's called a direct tie-up that I'm doing. When you raise petal 1, frame 1 will lift. So just to check that all the lambs and everything are working properly, so I'm just gonna hook 1 to each. This way, do a tie-up, and then you can see, hopefully, one of the biggest parts of the loom is functioning properly. It is occurring to me that I don't really know how to connect these properly. Okay, so it just hooks over the top like this. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, I think like that, and then, oh wait. Is it the other way around? Oh my gosh. Okay, I think I did it. Whoops. I don't think you saw any of that. Let me try to demonstrate on the next petal. The thing is, the only reason I think I somewhat know what I'm doing here is because I have taken a class on weaving, and I'm so glad that I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what I was attempting to do here. Do you know what I mean? And even then, I'm not really doing this correctly. Like, I'm still struggling. Okay, I think first to the foot pedal, then we turn it, lift it, and then attach it like that. Okay, I think that works. All right, so these I think are now properly connected, and let me show you what happens when I push on them. So you'll see that these foot pedals are lifted, so when I'm sitting and weaving, I'll use my foot, but I'll just use my hand as demonstration. I will push down like this. And this slit you can see right now, like I said, just direct tie up, so 1 foot pedal moves 1 lamb, but this could be hooked up to many of these going back. I could have 16 of these connected here if I wanted to. And then what happens when I push that lever is that I raise that particular harness. There you go, not frame, harness. And so that creates the different sheds that I need in order to do my proper weaving. I don't think I need to test the tie-ups for all of the other harnesses. Whoops. I think now it's time for me to add the front beam and the beater bar. And I believe if I can successfully get those onto this loom, it is set up so I could do some very basic weaving projects, which would be really exciting. Let's figure out what in the world I'm supposed to do with the front beam here. Oh goodness. Ah! Oh no. Oops. I am still working on getting all of my terminology right, but I just installed the front breast beam, and now I want to install the front beam. I don't know. I probably should have installed it first though, but no matter. I hope we can figure out a way around it. Like that, and then that has to sit in there somehow. But I think I gotta figure out this ratchet braking system. So this will be basically the matching bit that pulls tension on my warp from the front. So I did the brake on the back, now I have to figure out the front. It is tough to see. I also don't want to clamp my fingers into anything. Oh, I don't know how this is supposed to work. That's the one feedback I can give to Maycumber is if they could have some updated diagrams. I think a lot. Ooh, ow. Oh, I almost pinched my finger. Oh, ouch. This is probably best as a 2-person job. You saw none of that. That was just a whole lot of commotion. Sorry about that. Ooh, okay. Ooh, that's nice and noisy. Anyway, what I was saying before everything came crashing down, it would be nice to have a little bit more of an instruction manual on how to put these together, because I know from what I've seen online, I'm not the only one who's found a vintage one of these, and it'd be nice to know how all the parts fit together. Oh, you know what? I think if I tighten up these, because these wobble a little bit left and right, which is easy to pop out of the gears here for the ratcheting system. So I'm gonna see if I can tighten this up And then that'll hopefully make it so that it'll jump off less and will be safer for my fingers too as I'm working around this. So now the last piece is the beater bar. My question is, I actually don't know which way it goes. Whoopsie daisy. I think it's the wrong way around. I'm gonna have to turn it. Oh my gosh, there's not enough room to turn it. Okay, here comes the beater bar. Oh, hazardous. Ooh. So now when I'm sitting here weaving, this will be what is beading my weft thread into place. You might notice though that there is an empty hole right here. This should not be an empty hole. We need what's called a reed. Here is my reed, so I have to install that. I think that this is the last bit until I have what should be technically working loom, though we'll have to see when I actually try to warp it. Comes off. This is a 12 dent reed. I think that was the last step in setting it up. I might throw on some very simple dish towels and weave those and see what else I'm missing. And I'm just realizing I actually know what I'm missing. I don't have a shuttle. It's gonna be really hard to weave without a shuttle. Okay, so I have a local craft store, local yarn store. I'm gonna see if they have shuttles for sale or if that's going to be an order I have to place and then wait for it to come in. I hope I can go and get it locally because I do kind of want to start weaving this evening. I love weaving. That would be really fun to do. We just reached quite a critical. Oh, come on up. Good girl. Nutella wants to help me tell you guys about this too. The fact that we've just finished a critical step in warping the loom, which is threading all of the heddles. This step means that basically I have finished doing half of the pattern for my weave. Now, what pattern have I chosen to make my dish towels in? Well, I took inspiration from these dish towels that I did previously on my table loom. For the majority of these towels, they are in herringbone twill, but I did have an accent down at the bottom that was done in a diamond twill weave. I love the way that this diamond twill looks, but it was quite difficult to do on my table loom, but it's going to be so much easier for me to do on this beautiful floor loom. And you'll see why in just a moment, but I first wanted to talk a little bit about why I chose the diamond twill pattern as the one I'm going to go for, because I decided to lean a little bit into the history and historical sources. And while it shows up in many different places, it is a popular Viking Age textile. So if you know anything about the Oseberg ship burial, that is a Viking Age ship burial that is a high status burial of two women, one in her 80s and one in her 50s. And they are dressed in beautiful woolens, one of which has a diamond twill pattern. There's some theories on whether it's a local textile or an imported one. It's potentially an imported one. I mean, what blew my mind when I read some of these research papers is that for the finest textile, it's 60 ends per centimeter. As a comparison, mine that I'm doing here and the one that you'll see is, I think, 9 ends per centimeter, 9 or 10 ends per centimeter. So it's like 60 times more fine than what I'm going to be weaving. It seems like from the research though that it was woven in the natural color first and then dyed afterwards. You can tell whether or not the piece was dyed before or after weaving, because where the yarns cross in the weave, that point won't get dyed. So the point that touches, when you separate it a little bit, it will still be that natural color and not have the dye on it. So it was dyed afterwards. I'm working with yarns that are already 2 different colors. So you'll see the other color that I picked in just a second. We first have to finish putting the warp up though. And this part is going to be testing whether or not I put the breaks together correctly. So cross your fingers for me. I hope we can wind the warp onto the back beam. I hope we can beam this warp evenly and with the correct tension and everything. Let's try that now. Working quite late into the evening today. I'm just having so much fun. I have tied my warp onto the front beam now. I think the tension is quite even. There are 2 things that are left to do. The first is the tie up, aka connecting each of these harnesses to the foot pedals in a specific order. And the second is I accidentally broke some threads while I was warping. I pulled a little too hard and I see the gaps, so I have to do some afterthought warping on those and tensioning over the back of the loom. I think I'm going to do the tie up first. So before I go ahead and do that, I want to show you the weaving draft first. And the tie up is what is in the top corner. And then the treadling sequence is what is down the side. And what you'll see for this particular draft is that the treadling sequence 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to show you when you're working on a twill and you're working with foot pedals, that leads to crossing over your feet as you're attempting to weave, which is really clunky and not the way that I learned how to do it, because in my weaving class they said that if you do the tie up so that you are alternating, kind of, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4 on the foot pedals, you go 1, 3, 2, 4. And then you were doing what is called, I think, walking your pedals. So then when I do the correct treadling order and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a really nice rhythm to be in. And it's really easy for me to walk that without crossing my legs over ever. So yeah, let me do that tie up, let me hang the extra warps, and then we can start weaving a header and actually start weaving these towels. It's been like a week and a half at this point, how long this is taking me. The warping of a project takes so long. I'd say it took me about 2 good weeks to restore my loom and then warp it and weave these 2 beautiful dish towels on it. I absolutely love weaving twills, and I really like that while you can find a lot of historic context for diamond and point twills throughout history, I kind of leaned on the Oseberg burial as my inspiration for these 2 dish towels. I definitely made a lot of mistakes, both in threading the heddles and in some of my treadling, which you can kind of see on how these towels turned out, but I am still really pleased with this, and this is going to be a gift for my parents as a thank you for hauling this ginormous loom into their basement and allowing me to store it there and keep it there because it is quite the beast. I think that these 2 dish towels or tea towels were the absolute perfect practice warps and weaves for me to have on here because it allowed me to figure out a lot about this loom. I'm also so glad that I went with 24 ends per inch on my table looms. When I wove them at 20 ends per inch, they were a little too light, and these are nice and thick, so I think it's perfect for tea towels. If you enjoyed watching me weave this, I have another video here where I wove similar dish towels, but on my table loom. If you enjoy things like this, feel free to subscribe, and I hope that I'll get to see you again very soon. Bye!